Do you see a backlash here against Democrats in this state?
Well, I think this year is an anti-incumbent year everywhere, is what I...
Of course, this is a unique state where
Well,
it's predominantly Democrats.
Right, and we have 90% elected Democrats here, which is astounding because the voter registration doesn't reflect that at all.
No, it's amazing. It really is.
It's 3/8 Democrats
Yeah.
and over one half Independents and 1/8 Republicans. And I think what the Republicans have failed to do here for some period of time is give voters a reason to vote.
That's right.
And I think this year we're changing it. We have more Republican candidates running than we've had in 3, 4, 5 cycles in this state.
Competition.
Competition. We need
gotta have it.
We need balance. We need two groups that Beacon
Banging
Hill,
heads,
butting
right,
heads.
right, exactly.
That's how we get a higher quality decision.
Yeah. How about last year's ethics reform bill? What's your feelings on that? Do you have any comments on that?
Well, I think we all know the scandals. People sometimes joke with me, Brad, the only news we hear out of Beacon Hill is bad news. Yeah. And I say, well, is it Republicans or Democrats? And invariably, it tends to be Democrats here.
3 House speakers. Is that what you're speaking about, basically? 3 House speakers.
3 House speakers indicted, 2 convicted.
2 convicted.
I just noticed in the last few days, DeMacy's campaign committee had all sorts of violations, and he has to return money. In the Senate, we have 2 or 3 state senators in jail. I mean, it's laughable.
Yeah.
So we do need balance.
But what changes people's minds to vote? In other words, if you have 3 reasonably recent House speakers that are in trouble, are going to be in trouble, yet people don't vote Democrat, what changes this, Brad? What changes this?
Well, here I have a great answer for that. When the economy is humming along and unemployment's at 5% and our national GDP grows 3 or 4% a year, everybody's happy. Mm-hmm. That's considered full employment. Most people have jobs, incomes are growing, and people don't rock the boat when things are good. Everybody's sort of in it together. Mm-hmm. But now we see a time in our country when unemployment's almost 10%, and there are parts of Massachusetts where it's probably 20%. And when unemployment's 10% and we're growing at 2% a year instead of 4%, now all of a sudden we feel pain. We know neighbors who are unemployed. We know a lot of people who are unemployed. We know people who can't pay for health insurance. We know people who are making decisions that they didn't have to make a few years ago. And when that happens, the electorate says it's time for change. And in Massachusetts, that means we have to get rid of a 90% Democrat majority and bring 2 people to the table. We haven't had fiscal conservatives running the state for a very long time.
You know, it's funny how you say that because, the people, and I speak to a lot of people, believe me, and I ask, I get into the politics and they're upset. They really are. They're mad.
They should be.
They're mad. Well, you only have somebody. You only blame yourself by by doing what you're doing. And let's change it. Maybe we'll see what happens.
I think we saw that with Scott Brown.
Yeah.
And we saw a lot of people.
That was something.
It was it was a once in a lifetime thing in a way. But the big difference is that this time we won't catch them by surprise. Republicans won't catch the Democratic leadership, the politicians, by surprise. The people, we weren't surprised because the people have been telling us for a long time this is what they wanted. But the Democratic establishment won't be caught by surprise this time.
What's the biggest issue facing Massachusetts today?
Well, it's a short list. 1, 2, and 3 are all jobs.
Jobs is the big thing, okay.
We need jobs, jobs, and jobs. And that's the short-term answer. When we have more jobs, a lot of these tax problems and revenue problems take care of themselves because people's incomes are growing, their houses appreciate. A lot of things are better when we have jobs. And one of my fears is that we're entering a period of time that we will have an element of structural unemployment, both in Massachusetts and the country, where we may not get back down to 5% unemployment for a very long time. And that's why we need to be better than we ever have been in the past.
Okay. Yeah. How about the new taxes put in by the state a few months ago? They upped the tax, sales tax, I guess it is. They upped that. What's your feelings about that?
Well, last week we had the 1-year anniversary of the sales tax increase. Mm-hmm. It went up 25%. We have one of the highest state sales taxes in the nation. We have one of the nation's highest corporate income taxes. We have a state income tax. Now, I'm not saying we should get rid of all of these, but when we look at ourselves relative to other states and you think about an employer where they want to do business, Massachusetts is not a very attractive place right now. And the people are frustrated. You talked about the anger, Tom.
Mm-hmm.
People are angry that households all across Massachusetts had to cut back last year, and essentially the state legislature didn't. They kicked the can down the road. They raised taxes. They didn't make needed reforms.
Yeah. Gay marriage, Brad, what's your feelings on gay marriage?
Well, I think this is one area where President Obama and I agree, which is same-sex couples need to have equal and fair legal rights. I have worked with same-sex couples as an investment advisor, as a financial planner, and historically it was very hard for them to set up wills and healthcare proxies and all the things that couples do to plan their estate. And I think a lot of that's been corrected. In terms of whether or not it's a marriage, I think I'm more inclined to be a fan of the state constitution. We have a process for deciding whether or not it's a gay marriage is a marriage or should it be a civil union. We have a constitutional process. We know it works. California's gone through it 2 or 3 times now. And as a constitutional matter, if the people want to vote on it, I think they should vote on it.
Mm-hmm. How about abortion?
Abortion, I am pro-life. I've thought about this a lot. As a state senator, of course, I can't change the national debate on abortion. The few things I might be able to do, I can hope to limit late-term abortions, be sensitive to spending tax dollars on abortion when people are so bitterly divided on it. I'm not for lowering the age of consent. That became a big issue several years ago in a governor's race. And so I'm pro-life. But I've always been, I think of myself as a social moderate on most of these issues. Mm-hmm. I don't see myself at either end of the spectrum.
The GIC insurance, okay, which we discussed on our table talk many times, we finally got it in place, and which will help the cities and towns. If the legislation can put something in the laws that will change this so the unions do not have a say in it. And I think that's critical to a lot of towns. Now it has it in place. The unions went along with it after a lot of meetings and all that, but we do have it. But a lot of cities and towns do not have it. What's your feelings about the legislators looking at the GIC, which is the health plan, and making it open to each city and town?
Well, as a little story, at the end of the parade, the Norwood Parade ends at Shaw's.
Yes.
And at the end of the parade, I was exhausted, as you can imagine, and kind of rumpled and fatigued. But I walked over across Manhattan over to the fire department, and I introduced myself to 8 or 10 firefighters who were there. And I had a very long, engaging conversation with 2 of them, and they had a lot to say on the GIC.
Okay, I'm sure.
And I know Norwood joined it. Dedham and Westwood, the other towns here, haven't.
Yeah.
Boston has their own set of issues, and I think for the town it's going to be good. And I think that the employees, to keep the overall health of their health insurance plan, to keep it in good shape, the GIC is a very good way to go. Now, I know that some of them were complaining that I know they had a mid-year increase, and that's unfortunate.
We all have increases,
Unfortunately, I think that the public sector, fortunately for the public sector employees, they have been largely insulated from the cost of health insurance rising that many of us have seen in the private sector. But one thing I really took from my conversation with the firefighters was they are afraid of change in the system, and I think as we change the system, the people who've been in the current system, whether it's a pension, whether it's health insurance, whatever it is, we really have to preserve the benefits for the people.
Grandfather the men.
Yeah, grandfather the men. And really rebuild it for the newer employees, the people who haven't been in it as long, and make it more like the private sector.